I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. I want to welcome you to the podcast today. I have a beautiful guest, and I know we're just going to have this awesome conversation. My guest today is Sheri Johnson. Sheri is the founder of Sheri Johnson Coaching. She's the creator of Journey to Joy After Miscarriage and the Love and Loss podcast. She is passionate about helping women recover physically, emotionally, and spiritually after pregnancy loss. After 3 miscarriages and 6 years of infertility, she discovered a process of navigating the emotions of it all using mindfulness tools and essential oils. She has turned that into a coaching program that teaches other women how to journey from grief and triggers to a place of peace and, my favorite word, joy. You can learn the steps of her process on her website, and we're going to share all of this information. And the information that's not in her professional bio is that we are second cousins. And not only are we cousins, but in childhood and now, especially in adulthood, we've become good friends. So I'm just really feeling grateful to have Sheri here because as someone close to her, you feel this experience for someone, and to watch her do this work in the world and help other women navigating it, I think is beautiful. So I want us today to talk about your journey, Sheri, and also it's not something I personally have gone through. So for women listening who have had a miscarriage, I want them to learn from your wisdom and experience. And for those who haven't, how can we understand it? How can we be compassionate? How can we be supportive? So I wanted to talk to everybody. So with that long introduction, I welcome you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. It's so nice to be here. I am absolutely delighted.
Awesome. So Sheri, I'd love for today, if we could start at the beginning. I would love for you to share your personal journey just so people can understand your life experience, and also for people navigating something similar. And if they haven't gone through it themselves, what this experience is like, they'll identify with what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey starts back in 2012. And that was the year that I had my first miscarriage. I've had 3, as you mentioned. And that also coincided with the point where I was starting to search for something in life as well. I had started to feel this niggling feeling that I wasn't in the right job and that I was meant to do something different. And so when I had my miscarriage, first of all, that experience was, obviously something I'd never experienced before. I felt very alone in that journey. I didn't know anyone else at least I didn't think I knew anyone else who had been through it, but hardly anybody talks about it. So it turns out there were a few people who had been through it. And so I didn't really know what to do. I didn't have, everybody's experience with miscarriage is very different. I kind of just sort of sucked it up and went back to work and kept going. And my miscarriage kind of dragged on for about 8 weeks because I had started on this natural journey and I didn't want to have a D&C, which is something that's common after miscarriage. So it kind of carried on for a while, but I just kept trudging along. I didn't stop to think about what I was really going through. To bring it back to the topic of your podcast, I certainly wasn't intentional about what I was doing or what, I didn't take the time to stop and grieve. I didn't even think I was grieving at first. And there were all these other emotions that I just didn't associate with grief. We associate sadness with grief, but I had all this anger and resentment and envy and all these other things that I didn't even realize were part of my grief. So I didn't have a practice. I didn't have, a way of getting through that. I just kind of subscribed to all the different things that society tells us to do, which are keep busy, avoid pain at all costs. Time heals all wounds. So you kind of just have to wait it out until things start to feel better. We're told to kind of replace the loss. So just get pregnant as soon as you can. Focus on the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I did all those things. And it wasn't until about 2 years later, when I was still struggling to have my next pregnancy, to get pregnant again, that I went to see a therapist. And as I was looking for her, it was one of those, these 2 years, I was still continuing to search for something that I didn't really know what it was that I was searching for. And I kind of just put it out there to the universe that I need a therapist, but I want an energy healer. And I didn't know what an energy healer was. Even I just thought that I was somehow energetically sabotaging my chances of getting pregnant again. I don't even really know where that came from, but that's really where I was at. And it was this therapist that started to crack me open. And she did meditation with me, and she got into all my beliefs about myself. And she was the one who really started my intentional practices, or at least opened up my mind to them. So let me stop there for a second and just see is this like, do you have questions so far? Do you want me to just keep going?
I have a million questions, but I'm going to keep them. I invite you to just continue, but I will just say, since there is this pause, while my journey has been, different set of circumstances than yours, I absolutely resonate. And I imagine the listeners do too, with this sense of searching and not even knowing what we're searching for, but this sort of deep sense of knowing that there is some sort of support. And I admire your willingness to allow it to come. And often on this podcast, we've talked about, visiting a therapist, and, it can be a brave move because, you're vulnerable and you're opening yourself up. But when we do that, we can just learn so much more. So I just admire your willingness to go into the unknown parts. It can be really scary.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I never thought twice about looking for a therapist, but I think that's because I didn't have, I wasn't going into it with the stigma that so many people feel that there is around therapy. I didn't have a mental illness. I didn't have any sort of diagnosis. So I was just going because I wanted to feel better.
That's when I went to, I was like, if you can help me, let's go for it.
Yeah. I was
like,
all,
help me out. Tell me what I need to do.
Absolutely. And yeah, it was, I told everybody about her afterwards. I'm like, I am seeing this therapist. She's so amazing. And she is. And she also happened to have had an infertility journey of her own. And I think for women who have gone through a miscarriage, everybody goes through grief, but there's something about a miscarriage that is it feels quite different than other types of loss, because you're not grieving somebody that you knew. You're not grieving the times that you had with that person. You're grieving a future, which is quite different than grieving someone that you've lost, who you know and you've met. And then there's the second piece to a miscarriage where you've actually had a death occur inside of you. And there's a physical grief that goes along with that, that I don't think it's so unique.
So I'm very curious to explore both of the things that you just said, the the death inside of you as well as the grieving process. We can go there now, or do we want to just park that for a sec while you continue to tell us about your journey?
Let's go there now. Sure. We can come back to my journey.
We can start wherever you like. Both of those things seem, as far as I know, like not so talked about. Like, so could you, whichever one you want to start with, can you like dive in and walk us through how these things actually feel? And then, I'm really curious, like, how did you, navigate moving forward?
Well, let's start with the physical part, because I think that's something that I don't even know if other women who've had a miscarriage really think about this. And it didn't occur to me at first either. But I think how it came about for me was just continuing to explore why the experience of losing a baby in utero is so different for the woman than it is for the partner,
Mm-hmm.
whether that is a male or a female. And part of that is because of you, the moment that that baby is conceived, I believe that you begin to develop a relationship with that baby, whether you believe that that baby has a soul or not, whether you believe that it's a baby or a fetus or a bunch of cells. It doesn't really matter what you believe. That living thing has begun to grow in you, and you begin to care for it as a mother would their living child.
Absolutely.
So when that baby dies, it's such a strange thing to try to explain, because you don't necessarily, well, some people actually do feel it the moment that it happens, like they feel it spiritually. Um, but a lot of women don't actually know, and their baby dies in utero long before they actually realize what's happening, because they'll miscarry weeks later. And other times you have an ultrasound and you find out that there's no heartbeat, and then you have, if you want to miscarry naturally, there's several weeks, if not even like, 1 or 2 months before that baby passes, or is released. So there's this whole thing going on inside your body where your cells are changing, your whole body is absorbing, and like that loss inside of you, whether you are aware of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, our physical impacts the emotional impacts the spiritual, and vice versa. So when that's happening, whether you're aware of it or not, it's happening. And there's all kinds of stuff going on in your body that your partner has no part of. And that, I think, is a very unique experience. And it's something that we don't acknowledge, that like there's the moment that you miscarry and the pain, the physical pain and everything that goes along with that. But there is so much more going on before that your body is kind of taking in, and your cells.
Yeah, and like from the way you're describing it, and if I'm wrong about this, I want you to tell me, but it sounds too, just because it's so personal, it could be isolating.
Oh, definitely. It's very isolating. You feel like nobody else in the world understands this. And I think many women, I mean, it is a different experience for every woman, but there are commonality. There's lots of commonalities for many women. There's, feelings and emotions and things that go along with it that are very similar. So it comes down to finding the people that you can talk to that understand it and that resonate with what you're talking about and what you're feeling, and someone who can validate those feelings.
And what are those feelings? I know that they would be different for everybody, but what were your feelings?
There's so many, and I'm trying to think of the really key ones. I mean, the first one being you feel like you're alone. It's so there's things like feelings that you have about your body, like you begin to feel betrayed by your body, resentment towards your body. I'd gained a whole bunch of weight during my first loss. I miscarried after 11 weeks, so I had already gained a bunch of weight. I felt sick. All I ate was carbs and chips and hangover food because that seemed to be what made me feel better. So I had all this weight and nothing to show for it. And I felt angry about that. I felt resentment towards my body. I felt really separate. There were times when I felt like maybe I could have done something differently that would have made a difference. And with that comes guilt. I should have done this, or maybe I should have tried that, or I could have done this. So that's one big category of feelings. There's envy and there's resentment towards other women. So, a lot of my friends had little kids or were pregnant at the time that I was going through mine. And, you want to be happy for them, but you just feel so much envy that they have what you want. So that's a big one is envy and jealousy and all the triggers. I think that's another big one that I talk a lot about is being triggered. And we kind of getting into a lot of detail here. This might be something for later in the show, but we want to stop everybody from triggering us. And, they're trying to help us by saying things like at least it was early, or at least you can get pregnant, and have you tried this, or have you tried that, or there's all the things that people are saying with really good intentions but end up being triggers for us. And I think that is really common.
How do you guide people through, or well, I guess, how do you guide through people through the triggers, and how do you navigate them yourself? Because I'm sure that they come fast and furious all the time.
Yeah. So that might actually be a good segue to my journey, because or back to my journey.
Perfect.
It took a long time for me to figure that out. Triggers, I kept, we actually see a lot of social media posts out there where women are, I think it comes from a place of trying to raise awareness that those kinds of things are triggers. And so they're trying to get everybody else to stop triggering them. Stop asking me when I'm having kids, or stop asking me if I've had kids. Stop asking me, stop saying this, stop saying that. But there is always going to be someone else who doesn't know and who's trying to say something that they think is going to be helpful. So I guide people back to what is that triggering inside of you, because a trigger is just pointing you to a wound that you already have. And someone might press on that wound by saying the wrong thing, or in your mind, the wrong thing. But they're just pressing on a wound that is already there. So you need to find the root cause of that wound and heal that. So I guide people back to, and I have a whole process for doing this that I teach inside my program that really digs into what's underneath of that trigger. And usually it's a flaw, or we're somehow feeling flawed, or we're feeling not worthy, or not enough.
Could you give us like a specific example, like maybe a generalized one, whether you experienced it personally, or you see it sort of generally in your practice of like what one of the triggers is and what may or may not be not may or may not, but like what a possible wound could be, just so people can understand it a little bit better?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest triggers is seeing pregnancy announcements. And usually people will post like either an ultrasound or a pregnancy test or something on social media. And that's a really big trigger. As soon as someone who's had a miscarriage sees that kind of a trigger, they're like, it just throws them into a tailspin. And what I would ask someone to do is, how is that announcement making you feel flawed? And for most people, this isn't just someone who's had a miscarriage. This could even just be someone who has had their first baby and is trying to have a second one and hasn't been able to get there yet. The people who announce their second pregnancy become a trigger for those people. So this is like worldwide. Everybody has triggers.
Yes.
So in this particular case, I ask someone, how does that make you feel flawed? And really it makes them feel like they're not part of that club. So they're not part of the mom club. So they're not enough. They're not worthy of being a part of that crowd. And I'll usually try to get them to also go back to when have they felt that before. And most often it goes back to childhood, like those, formative tween years, grade 6, 7, 8, 9, when you were made to feel like you weren't a part of the popular crowd, or, maybe your friends all decided that, we're no longer friends and you're suddenly shut out, made you feel like you were not enough, or you weren't worth whatever it is that you wanted. And it almost always, it's the trigger that you're feeling now is actually pointing you to a pain that you felt before. And when you uncover that, then you can start to heal it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And so, like, along that vein, how did you, um, through the various tools you used, how did you find a greater sense of peace?
That took it took a lot of exploration, and it took time. Through therapy, I sort of gained some of the tools, and some of that peace just by going back and exploring my childhood and all of those triggers and that sort of thing. But I think it really was an evolution. After I experienced my second miscarriage in 2014, and then I had a third one in 2015, I started, by this point, I think it was right around this time that it's probably around 2016, I started following more teachers. I started following Gabby Bernstein and reading all these personal development books. And I think Gabby Bernstein was probably the biggest influence for me, because I ended up taking her Spirit Junkie Masterclass and her level 2 course and her programs. And I really started to develop, I started to become more open to meditation. And not just, I always say, meditation isn't about clearing your mind. It's about noticing what's coming into your mind.
Yes, it can be very not peaceful.
No, definitely not. And it definitely, when you start to use it as a tool, it can definitely not be peaceful. It's, you can notice you start to notice the movies that are replaying in your mind, and the negative thoughts and the triggers, and it can be peaceful, but it can also be really eye-opening. I mean, the work is hard, but I had so many aha moments through meditation that I just kept doing it. And then I would journal afterwards, or sometimes even before, what came up during that meditation, or what's kind of, what's going on in my mind. Because we can think and think and think, but sometimes it's not until you put pen to paper that you really see, like, what comes out on the page can sometimes be shocking. Like, you didn't even know that that was going on in your head. But somehow putting pen to paper allows that to come out. So those were the things that, over the years, I've started to really hone and pull into a bit of a process for myself. And now it's the same thing that I teach in my program, but it took time to develop those and research. And, it took years, and now it's a continuous process. I mean, those are all the tools that I now use in life.
Yes.
I'm no longer triggered by pregnancy announcements and all of those things, but my goodness, I have all kinds of hot buttons that my husband pushes and my family
We
pushes.
all do. We all do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how, that's why I think of my journey and the one that I teach as a journey from grief to joy, because it is a journey and it doesn't stop after, there is no end to grief. It doesn't really stop. You just continue the learning process and you continue that. I think this is probably something you can relate to. You just continue to set your intentions and you continue to use your practices, and life gets better and better every day.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely identify with it because, and I feel like sometimes, everybody wants the quick fix these days. Like, what are the 5 things I need to do to feel better? And you're just like, it's this journey, like, sorry, but there is only one finish line and I don't think you want to get there yet.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I love that.
But on that note of, when you just mentioned the journey from grief to joy, I would love to just go back to one thing that you mentioned towards the beginning, was that the grief journey is different because you're grieving this future. I thought that was just such an interesting way to piece it together in my mind. So can you talk about that grief journey?
Yes, that was the second thing that we were going to talk about earlier. So this is the part that's different for everyone. You definitely grieve. So I think everyone grieves that child's future. You start, from the moment you find out that you're pregnant, you start planning and you start, you come up with the baby names and you start rearranging your house or thinking about how you're going to rearrange it to make room for a third person in your life. And when you lose that, you're losing everything that you had planned for that child. And it's not just the baby, it's that, that baby going to kindergarten and the first day of high school and university and throughout their life. I don't know that there's a woman who will not wonder what their child would be like at any of those phases. So that's one part of it. You're losing that future. And each time, even each time you lose, you never forget how old that child would be at a particular time. Like, you can ask me anytime and I'll know my kids were, they would be 8 and 5 and 4 right now. So that you always know, and you're benchmarking them against, your friends' children who are the same age and what they would be doing now and who would they be friends with. And so there's that constant wondering, what would they be like and what would their future be like? I think that's a big part of the grief.
And like with any grief, it's always something we don't want to feel, right? Because it's so uncomfortable. So I'm imagining that you encourage women to grieve. Like,
Hmm.
how does that work?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So I believe that in order to release pain, we have to feel it.
Hmm.
So that's a big part. And it's, I think, the hardest thing to do as a human. We are taught to avoid pain.
Like, I'm just thinking now, like, what would you, knowing what you know now, to yourself when you were having your first miscarriage, because I'm sure so many women are in the same situation, like, don't want to grieve, I feel alone, I don't know anything about this, I have a busy job, I'm just going to stay busy. Like, what would you say to her?
So we're taught to keep busy. And I would say to her that keeping busy covers up your pain. It forces you to stuff it down. And when you stuff down any pain, whether it's grief or it doesn't matter what kind of discomfort it is, when you stuff it down or you try to numb it, or by keeping busy or any of the plethora of other things that we have available to us, like Netflix and sedatives and alcohol
Alcohol.
and what you're doing is numbing that pain, and keeping busy is the same thing. It's numbing, it's trying to avoid feeling it. So I think bringing awareness to that is the first step, like the bringing awareness to the fact that when you avoid pain, it will find a way to eke out in some other way.
Yes, it always does.
Hmm. And so it's better to actually feel it and release it so that you can begin to feel joy again, and also to control when you release that pain. Because if you stuff it down, it can, it'll come out in some way, whether it's through tears or anger or frustration or something that you don't even recognize. And it might be at the most inopportune time.
Yes.
But the second thing that I would say specifically to the woman who has had a miscarriage is that you're entitled to grieve. And most of us feel that we can't. Well, we go back to, I went back to work the next day, because I didn't think it was worthy of mourning the way that a living child would be, or even losing a pregnancy later on, like later on in the pregnancy, like at, 30 weeks or at birth. I didn't think that my grief was as worthy as that grief. So I didn't feel like I was allowed to take time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes complete sense.
It's almost like a guilty feeling, or it's this feeling that we're not entitled to grieve because it wasn't. We should be able to get over this quickly. It wasn't like losing a living child.
Yeah, and I even think too, like, it's just sometimes in these situations we just don't know what to do.
No.
Like, it's just so foreign that we're kind of at a loss, and we maybe don't see other people doing that, and we
Yeah.
don't know.
No, definitely. I didn't know. And I had, funny enough, one of my colleagues had had a miscarriage about a month before me. And I think she took 4 or 5 days off work. And she had told everybody that she was pregnant because she had her loss at 14 weeks. And so everybody at work knew, and I knew that she was off because of her miscarriage. And still, like, I even saw that someone else was willing to give herself that time, and I still didn't give myself that time.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing. But most women, I think, don't see other people going through it because nobody talks about it. They're off sick for maybe a day or two while they get through the pain and the initial, like, the healing, the physical healing. But most often you don't know that it's even happened. So you don't know that you're allowed to take time off or that you should take time
Yeah.
off.
And what about the people around you? Like, do you have some, words of wisdom if someone is listening to this and maybe someone close to them has just gone through this? Like, how can we, support someone going through this in like a really compassionate way?
I had a revelation when I was reading the book called Untamed. Have you read it? By
Hmm.
Glennon
Glennon
Doyle.
Doyle. Yeah.
It's so good. And she didn't go through it, but my whole revelation about pain and how to support someone who's going through pain came from her. So in her book, there's a section where she talks about 5 different types of response to pain. And for her, she was talking about, for those who haven't read the book, she's talking about her divorce and all of the hurt and the pain that she was going through that experience. And she talks about ultimately what it boils down to is how difficult it is for us as humans to sit with someone in their pain and
Yeah.
not say anything at all necessarily. Just say, I'm here to listen. What do you need? What we're tempted to do, and this, I think it doesn't really matter what pain you're going through. There are those triggers we talked about earlier. And we seem to think that they are unique to whatever pain it is that we're going through. So, one of them, as an example, we talked about earlier, I mentioned how people will say, at least it was early, at least you can get pregnant. Those are 2 of the things that people will say
Yes.
after a miscarriage. And they're not helpful, because what
No.
those things say are that, well, it could have been much worse. So you should be able to get through this pretty easily since it was early. Or at least you can get pregnant. So let's focus on that instead of, it's not worthy. Your grief right now isn't worthy because, you can get pregnant. But when I started to pay attention to my language, when I was trying to comfort somebody else, it didn't matter what they were going through. I say at least all the time. We all do.
As you're saying this, I'm like, how many times have I had said stuff like this? Like, I just like the number, like, it's just like, yeah, like whirling up.
Oh, yeah. Like we all say it. And we say it because we're looking for the silver lining for someone.
Yeah.
We're looking for the bright side. Like, look at the bright side. You can get pregnant or whatever it is. Like, look on the bright side. We're looking for that silver lining. And from the person who's the listener, like who's saying those words, who's trying to comfort the other person, what it says is, your pain is too much for me to bear. I don't want to see you in pain. So let's both just look for the silver lining.
I'm so glad you said that because I was just thinking the same thing because it's very true. Even when we're trained, it's difficult to sit in another person's pain, but sometimes people just need to be witnessed. So you're absolutely right. It's our default to just avoid the pain, which is what that is. And so I just think this is a reminder, and I'd love for you to say it in your own words, but for anyone listening, is to, seek out someone like yourself or a therapist, someone who can hold space for that pain so that you can fully process it in a really healthy way, because not everybody can do that.
Yes, that is such an important point. It's very hard. You have your closest friends around you, and even sometimes they're actually worse because they're close to you, your close friends, your family, they're close to you. So for them, it's so hard to watch you go through pain. So all they want to do is either fix it or tell you that you shouldn't feel that way. because they don't want you to feel that way, or tell you the at least. They'll look for the silver linings because it's so hard for them. If they sit with you in your pain, if they hold space for you, they have to feel your pain too.
Yeah.
And it's
And if
really
they're not
hard.
equipped to do it, like while it might be disappointing to us or frustrating or angering, it's honest, right? They're not comfortable or equipped, perhaps.
Yeah, it's really hard as a, for someone who's not a therapist or is not a coach, or I mean, you probably learned this going through your life coaching. What do I call it? Certification, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
That part of what you're trained to do is to hold that space. And it's really hard to do it when you're not trained to.
Oh my goodness. And so, if there is someone, I know we've kind of covered all of this, but I just want to ask the question another time in another way, who perhaps has, recently had a miscarriage, or not so recently, perhaps, it's something that's not been dealt with. What is some advice that you would give this person for taking some next healthy steps?
That's a great question, because I'm also thinking about those people who are maybe a little further away from their miscarriage, or they've had other kids and now they've kind of pushed it under the rug. Um, I think the first thing, the easiest step to take is just to go back to your story and what happened and write it down. I think that was one of the things that really opened me up again. I had kind of shoved my own under the rug, and then I decided, as I was starting my business and I was really getting into my healing, I went on a podcast and told my story, my whole story, like the details and everything. And I started to shake. And I had thought I had healed, but all this emotion was starting to come up again because I had buried it. And it takes writing down your story or speaking it or drawing it, even getting it out of your body is a way to begin that healing process. And it will crack you open and you won't be able to stop after that. You
Yeah.
start to, once you start the healing process, it's like, it's a journey that you've begun, and you have to keep going.
It's interesting when you say this because I've talked to a lot of people about journaling. And what I've heard so many times is that people don't want to journal because they don't want to write down the truth.
Oh, yes, that's so good.
And it's just was so fascinating, and it makes so much sense. Like, okay, keep the journal closed, keep the heart closed, keep the body
Yeah.
closed, or we're not going to tell the truth. And it's just, I mean, I'm laughing, but only because there's so much truth in that.
Oh, the truth will set you free. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is really, it's so liberating.
And wouldn't you say too, like write with, without nobody's going to read this, or if you want to write it and then put it in the fire, if you're worried somebody's going to read it, but just write really from the heart. It doesn't have to be sentences. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be well thought out. It's more the emotion and the truth of the writing.
Yes. In fact, sometimes even setting a timer and like not allowing yourself to edit, just write, and just keep going until that timer goes, whether it's, start with 2 minutes and then move it up to 5 and 10. And your brain will want to tell you to stop because it's hard. So your brain will say, nope, we're done. But it's at the moment that your brain tells you that is your breaking point. Like that's the point to push through and just keep writing and let your pen flow. That is when it all comes out.
So beautiful. Sheri, I just want to thank you. I feel like we could talk about this topic for a long time because it's relevant to so many people, whether they're directly going through this or supporting someone, or there are just so many parallels. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone, again, is going through this or knows someone who is, I want you to tell us how they can reach out to you, how they can access your work, and how your work can support them along this path.
Sure, yeah. So my website is just sherijohnson.ca, Sheri with an R, so it's SHERI. sherijohnson.ca. I'm on Instagram at Miscarriage, Love, and Loss, and Facebook group also Miscarriage, Love, and Loss. Of course, you mentioned my Love and Loss podcast. I also have a freebie on my website, and I don't know, Adrienne, if you want to put this into your show notes.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, it's a roadmap to navigate from grief to joy. So it's a free PDF, and
Awesome.
It kind of lays out the steps and the mistakes that we all make when we're first going through it. So that's at sherijohnson.ca/roadmap. I think that's all of them.
Awesome. And finally, like, I just am curious if there are any other words of wisdom that you want to share, or if there's something that we didn't cover that you feel you want to mention at this point, the platform is yours.
I think the only thing that I would add is that for someone going through a miscarriage or who has gone through it, I'll reiterate that you're not alone and you don't have to navigate it alone. But even for anyone else who is experiencing grief out there, and there's a lot of that going on because there are a lot of different types of grief. There's a lot of that going on right now with the situation that we're in the pandemic. There's a loss of freedom. There's a loss of jobs. See if you can take some of what I've said and apply it to your own situation, because these are all tools that are useful for any type of grief or loss or challenge that you're coming up with in your life. I think I'll leave it at that, Adrienne.
It's amazing. And it's just, I want to add one thing. I'm going to just string some podcast episodes together here. There's another one that just came out recently, and we were talking about recovery. And this woman has a podcast. And when I asked her, what is the universal theme? And she's done hundreds of episodes that you hear all the time. And the same message is exactly what you're just saying, is that you are not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage, if you are navigating this, to check out Sheri's work. You can work with her directly. Her podcast is awesome. Her regular inspiration on Instagram, I'm sure, will speak to you directly. And she can just, when you just have no idea what the way forward is, she can be a very valuable and trusted guide, and she really understands what you're going through. So with that, Sher, I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I was honored to be here.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.